Thanks, Blair, and thanks everyone for being here and giving me a chance to tell my story. So I started work for IBM over 50 years ago. So for those of you who are quick with math, I'm old. 20 years ago, I came to Boston to be president of a great company here called BBN Technologies in Cambridge. Some of you may know it. It won the ARPANET contract in 1970 and was very involved in the creation of the internet. As president of BBN Technologies, I got invited onto the board of a company called Tektronix, which took me around the world for board meetings, and in 2003, I was in China, in Shanghai, and met a gentleman by the name of Tim Say, who splits his time, interestingly, between Shanghai and Boston. So I'm interested in a connected society, but not necessarily the technically connected society of email and Facebook and iPhones, but a connected society of people. So when Tim was going to be coming home over Christmas in 2004, we agreed to meet for lunch. And when we sat down for lunch on December 28th, 2004, Tim said the words that literally did change my life. The tsunami had happened 2 days earlier in Southeast Asia. And I said to Tim, as we might casually, the tsunami was really a terrible event, wasn't it? And he said, David, 10 days ago, I was having lunch on the outdoor patio of the Meridian Hotel in Phuket, Thailand. Everyone on that patio 2 days ago was killed. And all of a sudden, it took a faraway thing and made it a little closer to me. And I went home, and as we do, I Googled Phuket Meridian tsunami. And the Meridian website popped up and said, we have 3 hotels in Phuket. 2 of them are so damaged that they're shut down, and 76 people were killed. But the other one's still open. And on the bullets on the side, among other things, it said, we have high-speed internet access. And I found myself thinking, this is the worst natural disaster of my lifetime. I know a lot about the internet from my time at BBN and others. Who else would be thinking of how can you use the internet from the middle of this massive disaster? I started Googling. I called and talked to the manager of the Meridian Hotel, and I found a guy in a village called Bang Tao in Phuket, an American, who had been there scheduled to open a hotel on January 1 that got destroyed. But I got a connection, and 10 days later, I found myself in Phuket, Thailand. I say to people, I packed up everything you would take to a major disaster. I didn't know either, but I took a wireless router, I took walkie-talkies, I even took duct tape, although I don't know how to use duct tape. And we started doing a bunch of things. Probably the most important asset I brought, maybe 2. One was I said out to a group of friends, because I've had, with 50 years, a lot of friends in the technology space, I'm going to go, and I'm going to throw 15 grand of my own money in the pot. If you want to, I'll spend it all like it's my own. And the other thing I took was lots of years of experience. When I got there in the small village of Bang Tao, there was a fishing village, and fishing villages are particularly vulnerable to tsunamis and typhoons and all sorts of events. But in different areas of the world, fishing boats are different. In this area of Thailand, they use what they call Longtail fishing boats. These are big, heavy-hulled fishing boats with a very, very long shaft driving a propeller, and believe it or not, a pivot at the end of the boat and a 4-cylinder automobile engine welded to the other end of the shaft for balance, and then they move that shaft to steer the boat. But the combination of the hull, the shaft, the motor, the nets, costs $5,000. It's a big, expensive fishing boat because they go far out. And 43 of them were destroyed in the tsunami. And I found myself saying, well, what's going to happen to these people? And that's when one of the first connections of the internet came about. It's an area with lots of expats. I met some expats, used their wives oftentimes as translators, found some people from Britain, from Holland. And we ended up capturing the story, the picture of a fisherman and the story of his family, and communicated that back to a yacht club in Amsterdam and another in London, and started a process of cocktail fundraisers to raise $5,000 to put a fisherman back in his boat. When I got there, I had asked the villagers, who builds boats here? And I met the boat builder and said, fine, will you start building 3 side by side? He said, well, who will provide the money? I said, I'll provide the money to build the boats. He said, who are they for? I said, I don't know, but by the time you're finished, I'll know. And we captured the story. Some of the people in Britain, I remember one said, we'll give you the money, but I want to name the boat after my granddaughter, and then I can take her and show her the boat, and so this boat's going to be named the Mary Eileen. And I was talking with the one Bang Tao fisherman, and through a translator saying, good news, we've got money for your boat. He said, that's exciting, that's great. And I said, there's a small thing. Is it okay if we name the boat the Mary Eileen? And his face dropped, and the translator said, it's okay, it'll be all right. And I said, no, it doesn't feel okay, what's the problem? And he said, well, I lost my daughter, Rosanna, in the tsunami, and I had wanted to name my boat after her so she would always be with me. I said, your boat's named Rosanna. That's okay, right? Yeah, we'll move on and do other things. It was a very powerful experience, and I stayed longer than I thought and ended up engaging people to run the project. And only weeks after I got there, we had up to 80 people had shown up to help, because we had put up a website and basically said, we're here helping, and people started showing up to help. In a phrase I had never heard before, a different definition of SUV was spontaneous, unaffiliated volunteers. People who get that urge, I want to do something more, but there's no place for them to go. And since we provided a place they could come, they came. One of the people who was there, a great young software development guy named Darius, was with me in Thailand. I came back home, he stayed for months and called me in June and said, that was the most satisfying thing in my life, can we do it again? It was like, well, I can't quite create a tsunami. But not shockingly, in a way, 2 months later, Katrina hit the United States, the worst natural disaster to hit the US in my lifetime. And Darius and I talked with a third guy from Tennessee named Dick Clinton, who was a cop from Tennessee. And we said, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it a little more correctly. We incorporated as a 501c3 that weekend. I went off to get the legal stuff done. Darius went off to take our website from Thailand and update it. And Dick started calling people he knew from drug enforcement task forces he had been on. Trust. So the trust that he had got us connected into people along the Gulf Coast, got us an invitation to Gulfport, Mississippi. We lived in the home of a police lieutenant and eventually got introduced by them to a church at 2113 Pass Road in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I still remember it was a church not much bigger than this, meeting with the pastor saying, can we use your church? And how many people do you think you might have here? I said, we could have as many as 50 people, I think, show up and work here. And they said, okay. 6 weeks later, we had 216 people living in that church. We had been incorporated on September 6th, and now 6 weeks later, we have a $150,000 a month budget and 200 people showing up to work on behalf of this community. There's amazing things happen. We had a group called the Termites, who were the guys who were experts at chainsaws. And you wonder whether you can be effective after a disaster, but I look at, so if someone's skilled with a chainsaw, that's very good. I'm a dragger. That's the person who stands there and pulls the stuff away after they've cut it. But the chainsaw guy is twice as productive if there's someone there dragging away. And you can learn how to do that pretty quickly. And I learned then that this combination of skill and people willing to do anything can make a difference. Darius had the idea. We were in Biloxi. Everything was destroyed by Katrina, including, not surprisingly, all the street signs in the city. And Darius said, why don't we put in a new street sign system? Okay, we got approval from the mayor. We had a group of volunteers work like a quilting bee to say we need 12 Division streets and 23 Howard streets, made up the signs. Everyone had a blue all hands logo on it. And every street sign in Biloxi, we put them up on telephone poles, and we replaced the street sign system. One of my volunteers came to me one day and said, all the cars are destroyed. These people don't have a way of getting around. Why don't we give them bicycles? As was my way, because I was saying, well, Scott, if you're willing to put up half the money, I will. He put up $2,500, I put up $2,500. We called the bike manufacturer, bought 100 bikes for $5 grand. The volunteers assembled them. We put our logo on them, and that became the shared bike system for Biloxi, Mississippi. It was so satisfying that it took over my life. It was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. So in the next few years, we went to Indonesia, Philippines, Peru, Bangladesh. You know, I remember closing the ceremony in Peru where the villagers talking to a group of our volunteers who had been there with the words, you are like angels fallen from the sky. And if you look at why you do things, it's a connection to the impact you have on people. Creativity and collaboration and cooperation are part of it. When we went to Bangladesh, for example, Save the Children, another phrase you might pick up, one of the bingos. So a bingo is a big international NGO. And there's a set of them, Save the Children, Mercy Corps, they're wonderful organizations. But sometimes they're constrained by what their mission is. And so we met with the Save the Children people in Bangladesh and said, how can we help? And they said, well, one of the things we're doing is we set up safe spaces for children. And so the families that are affected by this disaster want to be able to drop off their kids, but they've been going on now for 30 days and the kids are getting antsy, so they don't stay all day, and that's a problem. And so we talked with them and agreed that we would build playgrounds for these kids. So the volunteers got the wood, we assembled them, we painted it, we actually shipped some of the playgrounds by boat up the river and assembled them. And so while it may seem strange that building playgrounds after Cyclone Sidr in Bangladesh was our way of contributing. It was a way of helping Save the Children execute their mission. 2010, January 12th, the earthquake hit Haiti. The numbers are varied, but about 300,000 people were killed in that earthquake. I landed in Haiti the first week, and we tried to determine how we can be effective. We set up a base in Léogâne where we do our normal first day. We create street credibility because we're literally in the street, cleaning the streets, clearing debris, demolishing homes, creating a space for interim housing and things that can happen next. There's a major organization out of New York, a major investment firm that gave $1 million immediately after the earthquake to Partners in Health, the great Boston-based organization that's so strong in delivering health care in Haiti. But one of their managers called his CSR rep and said, I love what we did, but I want to go and help. And so their CSR rep called Partners in Health, who said, we don't take volunteers, but we know this sort of crazy guy, David, and he does. So they called, and John Cankrow came down to our project and worked and came back with his wife and 2 kids and had a great experience. And went back to his firm and said, this is another way we can help. And a week later, we got a $250,000 grant from that firm. And I had said to my people when we started, what we've learned in the first 5 years prepared us for Haiti. What we do in Haiti will prepare us for the next 5 years. And that additional grant allowed us to go from our normal 6-month engagement to an extended engagement. So we committed to building schools. We ended up building 20 beautiful 3-classroom schools in Haiti by a mix of skilled volunteers who committed to stay for months and months, architects and engineers, casual volunteers who would come and help run the cement mixer and do whatever, and employed Haitian workers to give them exposure to our Western style of building. It was a phenomenally satisfying experience. On one of my trips down to Port-au-Prince, I was in the Miami airport having an all-hands board meeting in March of 2011 when the triple disaster hit Japan, the earthquake, which triggered the tsunami, which triggered the nuclear meltdown. And so the 2 of us, myself and my senior ops guy, were in the Miami airport when it hit, literally changed our flights and landed in Tokyo 3 days later. We got into the community up north called Ofanato, Japan. Rikuzen, Takata, Ofanato are seaside fishing communities that were devastated by the tsunami, and we found a mayor who was willing to trust us, Toda-san Kimiaki. We did many things in Ofanato, but in a way, one of the most dramatic led to a TED Talk at the South by Southwest conference. One of our volunteers, a wonderful young woman named Becky Manson, is a professional photo retoucher, lives in New York. She would say her job is to take beautiful women and make them more beautiful for Vogue and Glamour and so on and so forth. But she came to our project just to help out, gutting out help, delivering food supplies. But then she realized as she saw the people getting things out of their homes, the photo albums that were destroyed and the tremendous attraction the Japanese had had to their photo memories. And she came to our project director and said, for $5,000, I could buy a high-quality scanner and a high-quality printer, and I could photo retouch some of those photos, and I could fix them. And because we allow creativity on site, we bought the equipment, and Becky started fixing them. Some cleaning just some photos, with literally thousands ended up being cleaned, and working on some that needed retouching. But what was magic is she blogged about it. And 3 weeks later, we had 80 photo retouchers around the world, each receiving a scanned copy of a photo, fixing it. We would print it, and literally people were coming in saying, we lost our daughter, but at least now we have a photo of her. I don't mean to be melodramatic about this stuff, but these are real things with real people that touch people's lives in ways that are just extraordinary. We went to Hurricane Sandy, and it's hard to imagine the impact of these events. The homes on Staten Island and parts of Long Island, these are 100-year-old wooden homes that were initially built as bungalows for people to come out of the city that were then converted to permanent homes. They were never well built in the first place, and they now had water that was up to 6 feet high on the first floor. And so although we could help by getting their water-sogged materials out and getting the house down to the studs, mold was a problem because people were living on the second floor of these homes. And so we looked at this as a problem that no one was going to deal with the poor. My issue, frankly, is that we really deal with poverty exacerbated by a disaster. Disasters hit the poor in a very different way than they hit anybody else. And so we identified that this mold was going to be a problem. We had experience from Katrina. We went and talked to the Robin Hood Foundation, a wonderful organization in New York, set up by a Wall Street guy on the basis that I'll take from the rich of Wall Street and give to the poor in New York. That's why it's called the Robin Hood Foundation. And we talked to them about the fact we could attack mold as a commercial size project. They funded us $1 million, $250,000 for a prototype, and then we proved that would work. And we rolled out a mold treatment program over hundreds and hundreds of homes in Sandy. You know, this weekend we had 400 volunteers working in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan, in Staten Island, in New York, still doing rebuild, down in Arkansas, and in Mississippi after the tornadoes. I say we ended up doing really 3 things. We do a physical thing by building a school or treating mold or helping a family. We do a psychological thing by allowing our volunteers the direct engagement in making a difference in someone's life. And the unseen one is the psychological impact we have on the community that we go to help when they see people who interrupted their lives to come and help. It says, we know you have pain and we care. And I'm going to take a moment to read a letter, a part of a letter that I got 3 days after the Boston bombing a year ago. It's from the mayor of Ofinato, Japan. He wrote a nice lead-in, but unfortunately, Boston Marathon closed with a regrettable result this year. However, I'm firmly convinced that it should be held again from the next year for those who love Boston Marathon all over the world. Taking this opportunity, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks on your great and long-term volunteer activities by all hands volunteers based in Boston for 8 months after the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. Upon these volunteer activities, Ofinato citizens were moved so much and encouraged. And then we could start rebuilding our town again. In conclusion, may Boston take back peaceful days and continue to prosper forever. Thank you.